The story begins as we are introduced to Shigeru Yoshioka, a young man who has always been aware of his unfortunate appearance. Shigeru was born with an ugly mug, but he has learned to accept himself despite society's harsh judgment. He finds genuine satisfaction in his work as a salesman, where he maintains his principles even when facing pressure from his superiors. Although he understands that his looks work against him in social situations, he has built a peaceful life around his values and work ethic. However, his world comes crashing down when a random woman on the train falsely accuses him of harassment. The accusation catches him completely off guard, causing him to stumble and scatter his shopping bags across the floor, revealing the questionable games he had purchased for his personal collection. The other passengers quickly form their judgment based on his appearance and the embarrassing contents of his bags, deciding that he must be guilty of the crime. Shigeru realizes that the world isn't fair to people who look like him, so he chooses not to fight a battle he knows he cannot win. He pleads guilty to avoid further humiliation, and the judge fines him 300,000 yen for violation of nuisance laws. He hopes that paying the fine will end his nightmare, but his company uses the incident as justification to terminate his employment, which devastates him completely. Several years later, the woman who had falsely accused him gets arrested for repeatedly targeting people based on their appearance, but because of her age, she only receives probation. Despite Shigeru's disappointment with the minimal consequences, there is nothing he can do to change the outcome. In the past, he was fine with his appearance, but the false accusation creates a trauma that prevents him from living normally. His self-esteem plummets so dramatically that he remains jobless for 6 years, surviving on his parents' financial support after depleting his own savings. He spends most of his time isolated in his room, endlessly scrolling through internet forums, until one day he discovers a thread discussing mysterious disappearances throughout the city. The author presents various theories about the phenomenon, and Shigeru notices another post from a forum member warning others to use bonus points carefully or risk being unable to return to their world. Initially, he dismisses the post as a joke, but since he has nothing meaningful to do, he decides to follow the guidelines about teleportation to another world. He doesn't expect anything to actually happen, but the prospect of escaping his current reality appeals to him. Suddenly, his computer screen displays a notification asking if he's ready to proceed, along with a warning that he would need to sacrifice half his lifespan to return. Shigeru wonders if his computer has been infected with a virus, but his curiosity outweighs his caution, so he clicks the next button. This opens a character creation form where he can select his looks, while other options like age are already predetermined. He notices that he can modify his looks and chooses -255, so he keeps them at a low setting, thinking it doesn't matter much. He soon realizes that reducing character traits like income and charm will grant him extra bonus points, so he systematically lowers most of his stats, planning to use those points for something important later. By the time he accumulates several trillion bonus points, he fails to notice the timer counting down at the bottom of his screen, and the form disappears, sending him to the other world without giving him the chance to allocate the points to his combat skills or magic. The next morning, Shigeru wakes up and looks in the mirror, shocked to see a fat 16-year-old body instead of his middle-aged self. He is soon greeted by other teenagers, and since the girls aren't wearing proper clothes, a boy named Seiji offers his shirt to the blonde girl named Rizu, who accepts it gratefully. When Shigeru tries to offer his shirt to another girl named Seika, she declines, making him realize that his luck with women won't improve in this world either. They all discuss how they were browsing the internet when the mysterious post led them here. Shigeru watches Seiji easily conversing with the girls, and since he has no interest in forming friendships, he heads to the drawer to search for useful items. He finds a coin, but it magically disappears when he tries to pick it up, reminding him that he had set his income rate at 0.01%, which rounds down to 0. They all begin gathering whatever useful things they can find, sharing everything equally among the group. Shigeru assumes the clothes won't fit his large frame, but surprisingly, the clothes fit him perfectly, making them realize this is one of the magical features of this world. Unfortunately, they only have 7 coins total, which makes them wonder if someone took one for themselves. Seiji directly asks Shigeru about it, which disappoints him since they automatically assume he's a thief. He knows he can't have any money anyway, so it would be wasted if they gave it to him. Therefore, he decides to leave the coins for the others to share. Seiji Seiji thinks they can't exclude him like this. But Seika believes it makes perfect sense since they all found coins except him, so they should accept the logical distribution. He believes that even if he had found one, she would have ignored him because of his appearance, while she thinks he must have been distracted by the girls to focus properly on searching for coins. Shidru suggests that instead of coins, they should just let him have the axe. But Seiji warns him that showboating too much will make him fail again. This shocks Shidru, so Seiji quickly corrects himself, explaining that he was talking about his own tendency to be shy, since his selfish behavior caused problems for people in his previous life. He claims that he's trying to change himself with this new life, so he can't leave Shidru to handle everything alone. He believes they are both shy people, so they should help each other succeed. But Shidru finds it difficult to believe that he's really shy. They all play rock, paper, scissors to decide on weapon distribution, and since he couldn't win, Shidru ends up with the club. Seiji offers him a warm handshake of friendship, and while the girls happily accept his gesture, Shidru refuses to make the same mistakes as in his past life, so he decides to go solo in this new world. Seika teases him about his decision, and he remembers why he sacrificed his appearance points to get a god status bonus parameter. Seiji finds a map and plans to go to the town of Iria with the girls. Since it's the closest location marked on the map, he invites Shidru to join them, and although he accepts their invitation, he secretly plans to abandon them halfway through the journey and go on his separate path. As they excitedly open the door, they are shocked to see a small goblin waiting outside. But Seiji rushes forward and eliminates it with his axe, which impresses Shidru since he displays very quick reflexes. However, they notice several more goblins approaching their location, which frightens them all. Seiji shows remarkable leadership as he quickly develops a battle plan, telling Rizu to cover the right side while he covers the left, since they both have melee weapons that are useful in close combat. He asks Shidru to protect Seika while she loads her arrows. Shidru can't believe that Seiji was claiming to be a shy person just moments ago, and now he's leading them with such confidence. They manage to eliminate several goblins, while Seika struggles to even tie her bowstring, which makes Shidru wonder why she was so eager to choose the bow as her weapon. She tells him to go and fight, but as he's about to join the battle, a goblin sneaks up behind him and strikes him on the back. Seiji realizes it slipped through their defense and tells Shidru to take care of it. Shidru confidently prepares to fight, but even a direct hit from his club to the goblin's head has no effect whatsoever. Seika expresses surprise at how weak he appears to be, and the goblin counterattacks, hitting him on his legs. He can't believe this is happening, since he should have strong fighting skills based on his character creation. He wonders why he is so powerless, and then remembers that he ran out of time during character creation, so he couldn't allocate his bonus points to any skills, which means he has no special abilities. He decides to grab the club tightly and takes out all his frustration on the goblin, which defeats it, and he instantly increases his level, reaching level 31. He's surprised by how fast he leveled up, but then notices he has an experience gain multiplier of 10,000x, which reminds him of his special bonus. Seiji and the others also level up from the battle, and they decide to upgrade their vitality and strength statistics, but Shidru can't see any such options on the screen. He decides to add 1 trillion points to each of his abilities, just to see what happens, but he suddenly starts glowing with divine energy and levels up, so dramatically that the system declares him an absolute god, which shocks him completely. He realizes a goblin is still hitting him, but since he now has enormous HP and pain tolerance, it feels like nothing more than a gentle tap. Shidru decides to test his new strength and gently taps the goblin's head, which sends the creature flying like a missile. Shidru notices that while Seiji and Rizu are eliminating goblins in a friendly competition, Seika is still struggling to set up her bow, which makes him feel sympathy for her situation. She starts crying, so he decides to help her without revealing his true abilities. He pretends to be in terrible condition, crawling towards her while claiming that he's suffering from bowstringing syndrome. As the bow bow is speaking directly to him and asking him to tie it properly. Seika quickly hands the bow to him, since it's practically useless in her hands, and using his maxed out dexterity skill, he helps her easily tie the bowstring, impressing her. She wonders if he was in the archery club during his previous life and offers him the opportunity to take the first shot. But Shaidru hesitates before grabbing the arrow, trying his best not to touch her since it will reduce 10% of his HP. So, he chooses the skill Ultimate Strike to boost his aim. When he shoots the arrow, it goes extremely high, making him wonder if he missed the target completely. However, a giant lighting dragon descends to Earth, eliminating several goblins in the process, shocking everyone. Seika wonders what just happened, and he makes an excuse that he was indeed in the archery club, which she believes without question. Seika offers to handle the rest of the goblins, so he returns her bow and arrows. As more goblins start approaching their position, Seiji asks her to cover them, but she randomly starts shooting arrows that pass right above the goblins' heads, so Seiji realizes they'll need to handle the situation on their own. Seika feels disappointed that she was unable to help them effectively, and she quickly runs out of arrows, so Shaidru decides to create some new ones for her. He quickly uses his craftsmanship skill to create arrows and tells her these just dropped nearby, but she repeats the same mistake and recklessly starts shooting the arrows, missing all her targets once again. Shaidru thinks it's completely useless, but fortunately, Seiji and Rizu manage to eliminate all the remaining goblins, which relieves them that they can finally continue their journey. Shaidru decides to stick with them until they reach their destination. A few hours later, the party soon arrives at the town following the map's directions. They immediately notice a restaurant, which makes them happy that they have familiar fast food available in this world. But as everyone enters excitedly, Shaidru decides to leave, thinking he needs to maintain his solitary lifestyle. Shaidru soon reaches a fountain where he feels hungry, and he spots a cat, thinking they are both alone in the world. He tries to pet the animal, but stops himself, remembering that if it's female, he would lose 10% of his HP every second due to his reduced charm stat. Seika suddenly arrives at the fountain, which startles him and causes him to fall into the water. She gets flustered while offering him a hamburger, saying it's a token of appreciation for stringing her bow earlier, which surprises him that she's so considerate and observant. His stomach growls loudly, and she realizes he's poor and can't afford food. He doesn't like her calling him poor, but he still can't refuse such a delicious-looking burger. However, he accidentally touches her finger during the exchange, which gives him an electric shock and reduces his HP, while the burger smashes against the wall. Shaidru realizes he has received 50.8 trillion damage from the brief contact, but as he's still processing his enormous loss, he notices Seika is crying. Thinking he rejected her gift, he decides to use his corporate communication skills from his previous world and tells her that she's so beautiful that his hands were trembling, but he would still gladly eat that burger. However, Seika gives him her other burger while apologizing for making him so nervous. He realizes it's her own lunch, but she assures him that it's perfectly fine since she's wealthy. Besides, he had helped her earlier by tying her bowstring and secretly giving her arrows, which surprises him that she noticed his assistance. Shaidru happily eats the burger and thinks he owes her a debt of gratitude, so until he can pay her back properly, he will stick with the group and put his plan of going solo on hold. The next day, Seika and Shaidru visit the weapon store to buy arrows. When Seika requests multiple bundles, mentioning her financial situation, the shopkeeper turns her down due to limited stock. Shaidru notices that her bag is already full of arrows, and although he could easily mass-produce them with his skills, he can't give them to her directly without raising suspicion. She notices he isn't buying anything and wonders if it's because he can't afford it, which he finds rather blunt. Just then, Seiji arrives and informs them that he's found a good place for them to rest, which excites both Seika and Rizu. But Shaidru says he'll just sleep in the park. Seika offers to pay for his stay, but he says he can't place such a burden on her. She gets emotional, thinking he must really hate her. Shaidru quickly clarifies that it's not like that, so she grabs his arm and leads him to the inn. He notices he isn't receiving any penalty because she's touching him through the cloth and not directly on his skin. Shaidru thinks she's ruining his rhythm and is is too dangerous for him to be mean to, so he wishes there were a leader to guide them all. At the inn, Seiji looks at their coins, planning their finances ahead, while Shaidru lies on the bed, worrying that he can't keep owing favors to Seika. He thinks that he must find a way to earn money, otherwise he will be eating scraps, and once he hits rock bottom, he will face the same fate as other people who went missing. Shaidru falls asleep while thinking about what his next step should be. The next morning, Shaidru somehow brings several food items for the group, which surprises everyone. He says that he couldn't eat it all alone, and Seika is amazed to see the delicious chocolate cookies. Seiji wonders where he got all these things, so Shaidru lies that a kind-hearted person gave it to him. Seika tells him that if he ever needs anything, he should ask her because she's quite rich. They all thank him, and Shaidru thinks about how he actually bought it all, but not with money since he can't hold any coins. He knew the weapon seller was short on arrows, so he used his skills to craft a huge number of arrows, and instead of getting coins in return, he bartered to get food instead. He realizes that although the trade was technically a loss for him, he's glad he could return one of Seika's favors. After breakfast, Seiji tells them that they don't have a steady income, and unfortunately, even the monsters didn't drop any money, so they need to find a job immediately. However, Seika thinks they should explore the city first. Shaidru is pleased with Seiji's leadership, and Seiji mentions there's a dungeon near the city that he thinks they should explore. This excites Seika, while Rizu wonders if it will be dangerous. Just then, a man suddenly interrupts them, asking if they're heading to the Arga dungeon, warning that they'll need an expert guide. He introduces himself as a reincarnated adventurer just like them, which immediately makes Shaidru suspicious. The man remarks that he's never seen someone as ugly as Shaidru there, but it doesn't bother Shaidru, as he's comfortable with his appearance. The man asks if they're new, and Seiji replies yes without showing any signs of nervousness, impressing Shaidru. But when the guide shows them some items, the guide explains that these items are found in the starting log house, and with these, they can get a discount at the inn. Since they couldn't find any, he offers to share these with them, so they can get a refund at the front desk. Seika immediately grabs it, while Seiji asks the guide who he is. He introduces himself as Kayoshiro, and he reveals that he makes a living by guiding beginners like them. Kayoshiro explains that if they hire him, they will benefit a lot, but Shaidru finds him quite suspicious because he's targeting new adventurers. However, since he will be with the group, Shaidru is confident that he can keep everyone safe if things go wrong. Shaidru believes he should leave the leadership to Seiji, so Seiji thinks they're short on money, but he thinks it will be a good investment to hire Kayoshiro since they can benefit from his knowledge and experience. They strike a deal and head towards the dungeon, but on their way, they come across goblins once again. Seika quickly grabs her arrows and starts shooting at them, but as always, she misses all her targets as the arrows fly above the goblins. Disappointing everyone, Kayoshiro advises her to conserve her arrows, but she assures him that she has plenty of them in her bag. However, Kayoshu thinks she should be more careful, as if each arrow costs 1,000,000 yen. Seika thinks that at such a price, even a truly rich person would think several times before shooting. With this new idea in mind, she immediately hits the target, impressing them all, but she claims it's nothing for an expert archer like her. The others also decide to join the fighting, while Shaidru thinks perhaps he was wrong about Kayoshiro since he's actually guiding the group properly. After the battle, Seika accidentally drops some coins in the drain, which makes her cry, but they still continue their journey. Later that day, Kayosho trains Rizu and Seiji, who spar with each other, while Seika shoots at a target on a tree, but she still rushes things and misses all her shots. Kayosho notices Shaidru isn't training, so he asks him about it. Shaidru makes an excuse that his skill can't be trained here. Kayosho thinks a club will make it hard to gain experience, but Shaidru believes it doesn't matter since he's already reached level 61. Kayosho adds that a club is rumored to have awesome endgame skills. Shaidru agrees because that morning when he went out to craft the arrows, he ran into a giant orc and decided to test his strongest club skill. However, the system warned him that if he activated it, the impact would destroy everything within a 200-kilometer radius. He realized the seriousness of the matter and decided not to use such such deadly power. Kyoshiro asks him to be more active in combat, otherwise he'll be forced to retire at an early age just like he did. He reveals that he was once part of a mercenary group, and the leader was his friend, but he stumbled over the power imbalance. He decided to retire. He adds that his friend even reached the throne, and he boasts that although he's level 80, his average status is 160. Shidru thinks that's too low, while Kyoshiro assumes he must be intimidated after hearing it. After some time, they finally reach the dungeon entrance, where Kyoshiro tells them that it has the atmosphere of an archaeological site and looks surprisingly interesting. As they head into it, Shidru notices Seika is quite scared. She gets thrilled to see stalactites, but Kyoshiro tells her to be careful as they might fall on her, which annoys her. Shidru wonders how old she really is, and luckily Seiji asks the same question in a very polite manner. To make her comfortable, he shares his own real age, which is around 30. Seika shocks them by saying she is actually 17, since they expected her to be younger. So Seiji asks her some questions about her school, and she gladly answers them all, making Shidru realize that she was a good student, which relieves him. Kyoshiro guides them deeper into the dungeon, and along the way, the group defeats Megabats as they reach the deepest part. Seika gets excited upon seeing a huge door, but she stops when she realizes no one else is opening it. Kyoshiro asks her what her level is, and she replies that it's 3. He then tells her that it's the boss room, and if she enters, she'll be killed instantly. Seika gets scared and hides behind Rizu. Seiji thinks it's enough for the day, while Shidru wonders how a mid-boss reached the upper floors of the dungeon. Seiji thanks Kyoshiro for helping them get this far, but he praises Seiji's leadership, saying he will make a good leader. Before they leave, Kyoshiro tells them that he has a special event planned for them. He leads them to a meeting room where neither monsters nor magic can penetrate, but Shidru thinks his special attack would have obliterated even this place if he had used it earlier. Saka notices snacks on the table, and Kyoshiro tells them it's a welcome party for adventurers who made it this far. However, Shidru notices something suspicious about the cans. He uses his appraisal skill and quickly realizes they contain a sleeping drug, but he's confident it won't work on him. Seiji turns down the offer, saying they have to return before it gets dark, which relieves Shidru. Seika is disappointed to hear it, but Kyoshiro tells them it's alright, and he might have overstepped, so he won't force it. Seiji gets emotional as he accepts that he doubted him earlier, but now he's sure that Kyoshiro is a nice person. Kyoshiro tells him it's alright because he must have been cautious since he's the leader, so he asks them to just enjoy the party. As they enjoy the snacks, Seiji feels sorry for doubting him earlier, but Shidru wonders if they're alright since his anti-poison spell will activate soon, so he thinks he should slow them down by talking. Shidru asks them what they were doing before they came to this world, which surprised everyone. He immediately realizes he shouldn't have asked such a sensitive question, since they all essentially ran away to this world. Seiji offers to share his story if they're interested in hearing it, so they all nod, and he begins. Seiji tells them that when he was a student, he left his house because he was sick of everything. He started his own company called Success Life, which Shidru recognizes since he once went there to sell products. Seiji mentions that when they were just starting, they had a door-to-door salesman who tried to sell him an expensive photocopier. They negotiated, and the salesman said he would bring a smile to their face and wouldn't let them down. He remembers that the salesman advised him to have fun, so he started having fun, and the company started progressing tremendously. However, it eventually went bankrupt because of an incident linked to artificial intelligence that was under development. It hurt everyone, and he became mentally unstable, which made him sad because he couldn't make use of the chance the salesman gave him with his advice. Seiji says that because of that, when he came to this world, he swore never to betray anyone, moving everyone emotionally. Seiji suddenly reveals that the salesman's name was Mr. Shidru, and he asks Shidru for his last name. Shidru lies and says that his last name is Sasaki, but at that moment, the sleeping drug takes effect. They all suddenly collapse onto the table as Kyoshiro and his men arrive. Kyoshiro is happy that their job was easy today since the target was some gullible kids, but Shidru is actually wide awake. Kyoshiro tells his men to restrain them, and as they cuff Shidru's hands, he remembers his past life where he was wrongfully convicted. He thinks he should be able to unleash his full power now since everyone is asleep, but they suddenly notice Seiji getting up despite being under the drug's influence. Seiji tells them not to harm his friends. This surprises Kyoshiro since he can't even stand properly. They grab Seiji, and Shaidru worries that if he tries to attack, it might hurt Seiji as well, but Seiji breaks free, which gives him a chance to attack. Kaiosho tells his men not to hurt the prisoners since it will reduce their value, so Seiji realizes they have been kidnapping people who came to this world. He believes they are the worst since they hurt people desperately looking for another chance. But Kaiosho reminds him that this is a world where all the losers end up. Seiji warns them that despite everything, if they try to touch his friends, he won't spare them, making Kaiosho laugh at his false confidence. He orders his men to tie them up, but Shaidru suddenly jumps on them, using his weight to knock them down. However, he isn't successful, and Seiji thinks it was a very reckless move. Shaidru asks Seiji to leave it to him, but Seiji refuses to give up, saying he can take them all down with just one blow. Kaioshin orders his men to attack, but Shaidru intervenes and manipulates their attack, using his skill pig jump to crush them with his weight, as they all outnumber him and start playing dirty. Seiji gets angry and decides to show them his ultimate move, which he got after converting all his bonus points into a vow to never betray his friends. Seiji mentions his ultimate skill is triggered by his anger, and he once again asks them to surrender, but they aren't afraid of him. Shaidru thinks it's quite interesting, and as Kaiosho attacks Seiji, he steps forward and blocks the attack with his handcuffs. Seiji asks him to step away, but Shaidru tells him that he wants nice people to redeem themselves in this world, so he will protect him as he prepares his ultimate attack. At that moment, Seiji undergoes a transformation, frightening the thugs, who begin to wonder who he truly is. In his new form, Seiji becomes an indomitable hero known as Aldean, leaving Shaidru in shock. That was the second episode. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.